In a crowded graduation hall, a black man stands silently in the back, disregarded, written off, and thought to be the janitor. But when the final award is announced, and his stepdaughter bursts into tears, the room goes still. The man everyone overlooked is called to the stage, not for her, but for who he is. Stay until the end because what happens next will challenge everything you thought you knew about present sacrifice and quiet heroism. Tell us, where in the world are you watching from and what time of day is it right now? She stands near the back of the hall, shoulders pulled in, a subtle tension she barely notices in herself. The crowd swells, polite and restless, murmurs threading through the air like thin smoke. Chairs scrape lightly against the polished wood, and the faint scent of polish mixes with coffee and perfume. She notices the sunlight through the tall windows, warm and amber, spilling across faces that barely see her. Her eyes search for him, for Elijah. He leans against the wall at the edge of the stage, hands tucked into worn khaki pockets, shirt slightly rumpled, tie askew. Not the image of someone anyone would expect to matter in a room like this. People glance past him, some with faint smiles, some with eyes that flit quickly away, uncomfortable or dismissive. She notices it all, the whispered jokes that fade before they leave lips fully, the tiny gestures of dismissal, the way some chairs are angled ever so slightly as if he doesn't belong in their line of sight. And yet, he stands quietly, unshaken, not offering explanation, not apologizing for presence he never sought permission to have. Her heels click softly as she shifts weight, subtly, like a metronome marking patience. She catches a flicker of a smirk from a woman near the front row, glancing at Elijah, shaking her head ever so slightly. He doesn't respond. She notices the way his jaw tenses just a fraction, so small almost invisible, but she sees it. She always sees it. The whispers rise again, low and tangled, but her attention doesn't waver. She thinks of the mornings when Elijah carried her books across the kitchen table, hands steady, thumbs brushing over corners worn thin by years of use. She thinks of the nights when he fixed broken toys, the careful way he taped edges with yellowed tape, just enough to hold, never flashy, never needing recognition. Somewhere in the middle of the room, a speaker clears a throat. The crowd's chatter dips, a tide pulling back. The moment stretches, a quiet pause that makes her stomach tighten, makes her pulse sharpen. She can almost feel it, the shift coming, subtle, inevitable. Tell us where in the world you're watching from, she imagines the voice saying, reaching beyond the walls, beyond the murmurs, beyond the casual blindness of people who don't yet know. And she smiles faintly, because she does know. She knows who stands at the edge of that stage, and she knows the story that hasn't yet been seen. And somewhere in that pause, Elijah's presence fills the space, steady as a heartbeat, unnoticed by most but undeniable to her. The quiet before recognition. The moment before the revelation. She blinks, a slow inhale, waiting for what will come next, for the world to finally notice the man who has always been her hero. The hall stretches wide, rows of chairs polished and lined with exacting precision. Sunlight falls in angled slats across the floor, cutting through the slight haze of dust and the faint scent of freshly waxed wood. The walls are cream, tall and unadorned, except for banners at the far end, bright colors, bold letters announcing awards, achievements, ceremonies of merit. They gleam in the sunlight, but to her, they feel distant, like a world Elijah is not meant to inhabit. People move through the aisles in careful clusters, their shoes whispering against the floor, heels, polished Oxfords, a shuffle of sneakers at the back. Some carry folders or programs, neatly folded and pressed, the scent of paper mingling with the faint tang of perfume. Others glance at one another, exchanging whispers that hover, fleeting, too quick for her to catch, yet she feels them, like tiny ripples brushing her skin. Across the front, the stage rises just enough to put anyone standing there above the crowd. The spotlight isn't yet on Elijah, and he remains at the edge, shoulders straight but unassuming, the worn leather of his shoes dull under the sunlight. She notices the scuff on his right toe, the faint fraying at the edges of his tie. No one else seems to see it, or if they do, they dismiss it with a polite shrug. A woman with a crisp blazer glances his way and tilts her head, lips pressed in a faint line. A man adjusts his watch, subtly angling his gaze elsewhere. She catches the half-hidden judgment in their posture, the way their shoulders stiffen as if proximity alone demands caution. Yet Elijah does not shift. He does not bend or apologize for the space he occupies. The ambient sounds settle into her consciousness, the soft creak of chairs as they are nudged slightly forward, the faint rustle of programs, the low hum of conversation that rises and falls like wind through trees. Somewhere, a child fidgets, tapping a foot against the floor, a nervous rhythm that echoes her own heartbeat. She notices a jacket draped over the back of a chair, fabric slightly wrinkled, the way the sunlight catches a faint threadbare spot. Details everywhere, small, specific, quietly alive. She scans the crowd again. Faces, some polished, some rough, all human, float by in her vision. Some smile politely, some barely glance, and some whisper, eyes darting in subtle judgments. And yet, scattered through the hall are quiet acknowledgments she almost misses, a nod in his direction, a brief smile from someone who knows, a glance that lingers just long enough to recognize his presence without speaking a word. Elijah remains at the edge of that stage, a steady figure amid the polished chaos, unassuming but unmistakable. He shifts weight from one foot to the other, the movement slight, almost imperceptible. The crowd is oblivious, yet she can feel it, a tension, like the air before a storm, a waiting that stretches taut across the polished wood and sunlight-dappled walls. She notices these things because she always does. She notices the patterns others miss, the rhythm of footsteps, the way hands clutch folders, the tiny scuffs on polished shoes. And she notices him, the way he fits into the world quietly, deliberately, not demanding, not retreating, just present. That presence is a kind of gravity, pulling her attention without drama, shaping the space around him without forcing acknowledgement. The room feels both immense and intimate at once. Sunlight warms one corner of the stage while the other remains in shadow. The polished floor reflects a fraction of every movement. The audience adjusts, shuffles, whispers, and yet, in the periphery, he waits. And she knows, even before the spotlight, even before recognition, that he has always mattered. The murmurs grow slightly louder, layered now with the subtle edge of judgment, of curiosity tinged with disbelief. Olivia notices it first in the way a man near the front leans back, eyes narrowing just enough to pass unnoticed, lips pressing together like he's holding in a thought he doesn't want to speak aloud. "Who's that?" she overhears, soft and fleeting, carried on the tide of conversation, the words almost swallowed by the room, but audible enough to sting. Elijah shifts his weight, straightens a sleeve, but his eyes remain calm, attentive, scanning the stage rather than the whispers. Not defensive. Not reactive. Just present. Across the hall, a cluster of women exchange a glance, barely a smirk, but the movement is precise, deliberate. "He doesn't even look like," one murmurs, voice low, fading before it lands. She doesn't finish the sentence, because it doesn't need to be finished. Olivia knows exactly what was meant. She notices how Elijah's jaw tightens, subtly, almost imperceptibly, like he's holding the moment in a cage of quiet patience. Another comment drifts toward them, harmless in tone but heavy in implication. "I mean, he's nice, I suppose, but lingers like smoke, a thin shadow over the warmth he brings." He doesn't respond. He never does. Instead, he adjusts the crooked tie with gentle precision, as if the world will not bend him, and he will not bend for it. A young intern brushes past, nearly bumping him, muttering an apology that feels obligatory, not genuine. He nods slightly, almost imperceptibly, and continues watching the edges of the stage. She sees the little moments, the way he steps aside, the tilt of his shoulders, the quiet grace with which he absorbs microaggressions without ever letting them define him. Elijah's presence is steady, like a worn oak in a room of swaying reeds. And yet, the crowd continues. The faint whispers, the sidelong glances, the subtle distancing, all invisible to anyone but her. She notes the precise way he responds, a slight smile to a child, a nod to a janitor crossing the back aisle, a soft chuckle at an innocent comment. He does not fight the dismissiveness, he lets it exist, unchallenged, unconsumed. She notices it, though. She notices the way the shoulders of the privileged tighten, the polite stares falter, the subtle withdrawal as if proximity to him threatens some fragile social order. And still, he remains unmoved, attentive not to the judgment, but to the needs around him, the small acts of care no one else acknowledges. Her eyes catch a man in a suit, leaning slightly toward another whispering in his ear. I didn't think the words start, cut off by a cough, but the glance is enough. Elijah doesn't flinch. The faint tension in his neck is invisible to anyone but the one person who always sees him. Olivia feels a tug of pride and sorrow all at once. She has seen this 1,000 times, each slight, each small dismissal, met with his quiet dignity. And there, at the back, a lone janitor pauses by a doorway. His gaze lingers on Elijah, not with judgment, not with whisper, but with acknowledgement, a small nod that says, without words, I see you. Olivia sees it, and she knows, those who notice don't always speak first. A folded program slips from someone's lap. Elijah bends slightly, retrieves it, and hands it back, wrist brushing the other person's. No fanfare. No announcement. Just presence. She feels the weight of it, these small, unremarkable moments that ripple outward, unnoticed by most, shaping something stronger than the whispers, something steady, unshakable. And in that quiet, in the edges of a hall buzzing with polite dismissal, she realizes something. This is the measure of him, not in applause or recognition, but in the constancy of attention, in the small acts that anchor life quietly. And she waits, along with the few who notice, for a world that has yet to catch up with what has always been true. A loose corner of the program flutters in her hand, and for a moment, the present blurs. The murmurs, the judgmental glances, the polite disinterest, they fade into the background, replaced by a quiet memory. 10 years ago, she sits cross-legged on the kitchen floor, socks sliding against the linoleum, knees brushing the cold. The apartment smells faintly of cinnamon and old books, the radiator hissing softly in the corner. Her mother's voice drifts from the bedroom, sharp and tired, and she feels the familiar twist of anxiety tighten in her stomach. Elijah kneels beside her, hands rough and warm, guiding a small cardboard model of a solar system into place. He presses the planets gently onto the cardboard, one by one, the glue drying too fast, spilling in tiny white puddles that he brushes away with his thumb. Careful, he murmurs. Too much glue and it sticks forever. She watches him, the concentration etched into his face, the way his eyebrows furrow slightly above calm, steady eyes. She remembers the crooked tie he wears, a gift from her grandfather, always slightly askew no matter how he straightens it. It's the effort that counts, he says softly. Not perfection. A later memory surfaces. Afternoon, rain tapping softly against the kitchen window. She comes home from school with a scraped knee, jacket damp, backpack heavy with homework and guilt. He's at the stove, stirring something in a chipped blue mug. Hot chocolate, thick and sweet, the steam curling into the damp air. Drink this, he says, placing it in her hands. Better than tears. And somehow, it is. Her fingers wrap around the mug, warmth spreading, and she feels steadied, not by grand words, but by presence. Another memory, sharper, stings more. Middle school talent show. She fumbles on stage, the microphone slipping from her grasp, laughter rippling from the audience like a cold wind. She remembers the heat rising in her cheeks, the weight of embarrassment heavy as a brick. From the wings, he stands, hands tucked in pockets, nodding once. That single gesture, quiet, unnoticed by anyone else, gives her courage. Later, in the dark hallway, he says, mistakes don't define you. Keep going. No lecturing. No overreaction. Just a steady reminder that someone believes in her. And then the turning point. Late autumn, the first time she truly accepts him not as an outsider but as her father. They sit on the worn couch, the orange glow of the streetlight seeping through the blinds. He listens to her recount a long, difficult day. Not interrupting, not offering advice unless she asks. Just listening. Her small hand brushes his sleeve, and for the first time, she feels the gravity of belonging, not because of blood, not because of expectation, but because of the choice he made every day to show up. Objects anchor these memories: a crooked tie, a chipped blue mug, a smudge of glue on a fingertip, a damp backpack leaning against the radiator. Details she almost forgets in the rush of adulthood, yet in this quiet hall, they surface like echoes. She blinks, pulls herself out of the memory, back to the polished floor, the sunlight on the stage, the whispers in the room. The murmurs, the sidelong glances, the subtle dismissals, they are still there, but something deeper lingers beneath them. A warmth that cannot be shaken, a steady presence that has quietly shaped her life. And for the first time in this room full of polite observers and whispering judgments, she feels the weight of what she has always known. He has been the constant, the anchor, the quiet hero whose acts are stitched into the very fabric of her being. She shifts slightly, heels brushing against the polished floor, scanning the room again. Something in the air has changed, almost imperceptibly. Not the applause yet, not the spotlight, but a rhythm beneath the murmurs. A few eyes linger on Elijah, not dismissive, not mocking, but observant, quietly aware. A man near the center aisle, holding a folder, adjusts his glasses and nods subtly in Elijah's direction. Just a small tilt of the head, barely visible, yet it carries acknowledgement. She notices it, her chest tightening with a mix of pride and relief. Across the room, a teacher from the local school offers a quick, knowing smile as Elijah passes. It lasts only a heartbeat, but she sees it: recognition without fanfare, understanding without explanation. The public speaker steps forward at the podium. The room quiets, chairs settling with soft squeaks. Olivia watches Elijah, still at the edge, waiting. The speaker's voice is calm but resonant, telling a story she knows only too well. A man on a subway platform, a child stranded among the tracks, chaos and fear threatening to overwhelm. And a man, unseen, unheralded, who pulls the child to safety, fingers gripping small shoulders, calm in the storm, unnoticed by the throng around him. She watches Elijah straighten slightly, eyes catching the story, though the speaker has no idea who he is. The details are vivid: the roughness of the platform, the cold sting of early morning air, the grease under his fingernails as he lifts a fallen bicycle from the track, a scrap of electrical tape holding shoelaces together on trembling feet. Ordinary things, and yet heroic. A young woman seated 2 rows ahead glances at Elijah, lips curving in a silent smile, and nods toward him almost imperceptibly. Another man, leaning against a pillar, folds his arms, then uncrosses them, tilting his head as if weighing the measure of a man in the room who has always gone unseen. They are small gestures, brief, subtle, but each one accumulates, layering acknowledgement over dismissal, recognition over neglect. She notices the change in Elijah, too. Not pride, not flourish, not a shift in demeanor, but a subtle lightness. Shoulders no longer stiff, jaw no longer tense. A hand brushes across his tie, straightening it, perhaps unconsciously. He does not seek attention, but the world is starting to notice anyway. The story continues, weaving into the present, pulling threads from past moments she has memorized: the scraped knee and hot chocolate, the crooked tie, the glue on the solar system planets, the whispered courage backstage. Each memory intersects with the speaker's story, aligning quietly, inexorably, drawing recognition like sunlight toward a windowpane. A few people lean forward now, caught in the narrative, connecting details without knowing they are watching the man in front of them, the quiet hero who has always acted without need of acknowledgement. Her mother, sitting stiff in the front row, shifts slightly, expression tightening as if sensing the weight of her absence in this story. Others glance, uncertain, but the momentum is building. And then there is Elijah, standing steady, hands at his sides, not waiting for applause but aware that something is unfolding. The subtle nods, the knowing glances, the whispered acknowledgments, they are cumulative, forming a lattice of recognition that rises imperceptibly around him. She watches, holding her breath, understanding that this is the moment before the reveal, the instant where quiet consistency begins to assert itself over ignorance, where presence becomes impossible to ignore. Somewhere across the hall, someone clears a throat, a cue unnoticed by the oblivious but significant to the few who pay attention. The tide is turning. Small gestures now feel like the first cracks in a wall of polite neglect. The room is still polite, still measured, but the air vibrates with anticipation. And she knows, soon, the spotlight will reach him. Soon, they will see what she has always known. The microphone squeaks briefly. Chairs scrape against the polished floor one last time before silence stretches across the hall. Olivia feels the tension, a tangible pull in the air, like the moment before the first note of a long-awaited song. And then a voice, a public authority, firm but warm, calls out clearly. Elijah Thompson. Will you please come forward? Heads turn. A few people murmur in surprise. He doesn't move immediately, standing at the edge of the stage, steady. Olivia sees it, his posture, quiet and unassuming, does not bend to the sudden focus. Then, slowly, deliberately, he steps forward, each footfall measured, bridging the distance from background to center stage. The room reacts in stages. First, silence. Then recognition flickers in a few faces, a nod here, a blink of comprehension there. And finally, applause begins, hesitant at first, growing, filling the space. It's not raucous, it doesn't need to be. It is measured, deliberate, acknowledging, and in its sound, she hears everything she has known all along. The speaker gestures toward him. Elijah, the voice says, calm and steady, for years, you have quietly gone beyond what anyone could expect. Your acts of courage, your presence, your unwavering support, they have shaped lives, including that of this young woman right here. Elijah's hands are at his sides, fingers brushing the fabric of his worn shirt. He does not raise them for applause. He does not bow or preen. He simply steps closer to the microphone, and his voice, low but clear, carries across the room. I didn't do it for recognition, he says, eyes scanning the faces before him without fixating on any, steady and even. I did it because someone needed help. The words hang, a bridge between quiet action and sudden acknowledgement. He continues, measured, emotionally restrained but resonant. There are small moments that pass unnoticed. A scraped knee. A lost backpack. A child frightened on a subway platform. A project needing glue and patience. None of these are heroic in the eyes of the world. But to someone living through them, to someone seeing it, they matter. And I show up, every time, because it needs to be done. The applause rises, genuine now, filling the space with a warmth that had been absent, unfamiliar to him but not unwelcome. Some faces flush, some avert eyes in shame for past judgments. She notices a few of the mockers, the whispered dismissals, the sidelong glances, now frozen, caught mid-apology, half-formed words hanging in the air. He glances briefly toward Olivia, just long enough for her to feel the connection, the acknowledgement that this moment belongs not only to him but to every life he has quietly touched. Then he looks back to the crowd, voice steady. None of this was done for recognition. None of it. It was done because someone needed help, and someone had to show up. And with that, the room shifts, the pattern broken. Those who doubted, who whispered, who glanced away, now see. Not a showy spectacle, not a dramatic flourish, but the slow, undeniable proof of a life lived in quiet service. Elijah steps back slightly, not triumphant, but present, complete. The applause continues, softer now, more deliberate, as if honoring each small act that has gone unseen for years. Olivia exhales slowly, heart lifted, knowing that the recognition finally matches the reality she has always carried. Her stepfather, her hero, has always been extraordinary. The applause tapers, leaving a quiet hum in the room, a residue of recognition that feels almost tangible. Olivia notices the shift immediately. Heads that once tilted with dismissive curiosity now hang slightly, eyes flicking away, cheeks faintly flushed. Those who whispered, smirked, or subtly judged, the mockers, sit frozen, unsure where to place their hands, their feet, or their words. A woman in a polished blazer shifts in her seat, lips pressed together. She opens her mouth, then closes it again, as if the act of apology itself requires courage she hadn't anticipated. Another man, suit jacket tight across his shoulders, clears his throat, mutters something indistinct, and looks anywhere but Elijah. He had dismissed him, silently, repeatedly. Now, he has no script. Elijah doesn't seize the moment. He doesn't call attention to their discomfort. He simply nods once, faint, almost imperceptible, acknowledging their recognition without condemning their past ignorance. The dignity in that single gesture presses heavier than any words they could muster. And then, the small, symbolic moment. A chair is offered, placed carefully in front of the stage. Not for him to sit in triumph, not as a token, but as acknowledgement of space he has always deserved. He doesn't rush forward. He studies it for a heartbeat, then takes it with measured grace, sliding into it quietly, composed, presence full but unassuming. Some approach, hesitant. I'm sorry, one whispers, barely audible. Elijah looks at the speaker, expression neutral but soft. A slight nod. Thank you, he says, voice even, carrying weight without burden. He does not dwell on the past slight. He does not gloat over the belated acknowledgement. He allows the moment to exist exactly as it is, brief, full, complete. Olivia watches, noticing every subtlety, the way shoulders loosen, the way whispered judgments retreat, the way admiration now tiptoes into genuine recognition. She sees those who once ignored him glance again, measuring their assumptions against the quiet truth of his actions. Even the previously dismissive figures cannot ignore him now. They shift, adjust, and for the first time in this room, they see the gravity of presence, the power of consistent kindness, the quiet heroism that requires no stage, no announcement, no spotlight, until the world finally catches up. He sits for a moment, steady and calm, absorbing the acknowledgement without arrogance, letting it settle naturally. Olivia catches his glance, the faintest smile just for her, and she feels the full measure of what they have always shared, not approval from strangers, not applause from crowds, but the unshakable bond of consistent presence, of quiet heroism that finally receives its due. The hall empties slowly, chairs scraping, conversations muted to a low murmur. Olivia walks beside Elijah, but neither speaks. They move together in quiet rhythm, footsteps soft against the polished floor, the warmth of the sunlight fading as they reach the exit. Outside, the air carries a hint of evening, a cool breeze brushing against their faces, gentle and unremarkable, yet somehow comforting. At home, the apartment smells faintly of baked cake, sugar mingling with the lingering scent of coffee. Olivia sets the plate on the table, careful not to disturb the small photograph beside it, a candid shot of them from years ago, messy kitchen, glue on hands, smiles faint but steady. She places a slice of cake next to him. He nods, no words needed, the gesture speaking volumes. They eat in silence, a quiet coexistence, the kind that carries more weight than declarations or celebrations. The day's recognition has come and gone, the applause, the murmurs, the hesitant acknowledgments, all are echoes now, fading into memory. Yet in the stillness of the kitchen, the unspoken truth remains: presence matters more than performance, constancy more than recognition, love and care more than applause. Elijah reaches for the photograph, straightening it slightly, the worn edges soft under his fingertips. He glances at Olivia, eyes steady, and she feels the full measure of the life they have built together. No grand declarations. No dramatic flourish. Just quiet, shared understanding. And in that simple ritual, the cake, the photograph, the soft exhale of an evening closing, they exist fully, without expectation or performance, each aware of the other's steadfast presence. The world has acknowledged him, finally, but it is this quiet moment that carries the deepest truth. Olivia's gaze lifts toward the audience, the one unseen yet present through her reflection. Think about someone who quietly showed up for you, she whispers, voice low, measured. How can you honor them today? The moment lingers, suspended between memory and action, between recognition and everyday life. And in the gentle rhythm of shared presence, the story settles, complete, unassuming, yet profoundly true. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.